Chris Watts' parents, defending their son, denying the truth. What would you do if your child confessed to an unthinkable crime? Would you turn away or stand by them, no matter what? Welcome to Dark Truths, true crime stories, where we uncover the darkest corners of human nature. Today, we're diving into the Chris Watts case, a father who murdered his family, shocking the world. But what's even more shocking? His parents, Cindy and Ronnie Watts, refused to call him a monster. Why did they defend him? Hit that subscribe button and let's unravel this haunting story together. Introduction: A family torn in two. All right, let's dive into a story that's as heartbreaking as it is complicated. The Chris Watts case. It's one of those true crime stories that sticks with you, makes you question everything. Back in August 2018, we all heard the news. Chris, a husband and father from Colorado, murdered his pregnant wife, Shanann, and their two little girls, Bella and Celeste. It's the kind of crime that turns your stomach, makes you wonder how someone could do something so awful. Most people didn't hesitate to call Chris a monster. The evidence was overwhelming: his confession, the surveillance footage, the whole chilling timeline. But there's one part of the story that doesn't quite fit. Chris's parents, Cindy and Ronnie Watts. They didn't join the public in pointing fingers. Instead, they stood by their son, asking questions, doubting the story everyone else seemed to buy. Why would parents defend someone who admitted to such a horrific act? Are they just stuck in denial, unable to face the truth? Or do they see something about Chris that the rest of us are missing? Tonight, we're going to unpack their side of the story, their interviews, their grief, their loyalty, and the backlash they face for speaking out. It's a messy, emotional ride, one that makes you think hard about where love ends and denial begins. So, let's go back to the beginning and figure out what's going on with Cindy and Ronnie Watts. The Watts family dynamic before the murders. Let's set the scene. Spring Lake, North Carolina, a small town where Chris Watts grew up. His mom, Cindy, and dad, Ronnie, raised him to be a good kid. Quiet, polite, the kind who never made trouble. Cindy loved telling stories about Chris as a boy, how he played sports from age 5 all the way through high school. Football, baseball, he was out there, just a normal kid, always smiling, never arguing. Ronnie would say Chris was like him, calm, steady, not one for drama. Neighbors and friends saw it too. They'd tell you, Chris? Oh, he was a good kid, always respectful, never caused a scene. But looking back, you have to ask, was that quiet nature hiding something deeper? By the time Chris met Shanann in 2010, he'd gotten really good at keeping the peace. He was passive, the kind of guy who'd nod and go along to avoid a fight. His parents adored that about him. It made him their good boy, the son they could always count on. But maybe that same trait kept him from seeing the cracks forming in his life. When Chris started his secret affair with Nicole Kessinger in 2018, nobody in his family had a clue. Not Cindy, not Ronnie, not his sister, Jamie. They saw the Chris they'd always known, the one who never stepped out of line. So, when the world came crashing down, it's no wonder they couldn't believe their son could do something so unthinkable. Were they blind to who he was becoming? Or were there just no signs to see? The strained relationship with Shanann. Now, let's talk about Shanann, because this is where things get tense. When she came into Chris's life, it wasn't exactly love at first sight with his mom, Cindy. From the moment they met, Cindy and Shanann just didn't click. Cindy told local reporters it was like they were always at odds, like they couldn't find a way to get along no matter what. Cindy felt like Shanann was taking over, calling all the shots in Chris's life. She'd say Shanann was controlling, like she was pulling Chris away from his family. When Chris and Shanann moved to Frederick, Colorado in 2013, it hit Cindy hard. North Carolina was home, and now her son was halfway across the country. She'd tell people, I couldn't do anything right in Shanann's eyes, like she was constantly being judged. Shanann had her own side. In text to her friends, she'd vent about Cindy being too pushy, always trying to run the show. She felt like her mother-in-law didn't respect her as a wife or a mom, always stepping on her toes. You can see it in those messages. Shanann was frustrated, fighting to hold her ground in the family. It wasn't just a little misunderstanding. It was two strong women who couldn't figure out how to coexist. And Chris? He was stuck right in the middle, not picking a side, which probably just made everything worse. That tension was like a ticking time bomb, setting the stage for a fight that would tear everyone apart. The Nut Incident and Estrangement. Okay, let's get into the moment that really changed everything. The Nut Incident. It happened in July 2018, when Shanann took Bella and Celeste to North Carolina for a 6-week visit with Cindy and Ronnie. Things were already rocky, but this was the spark that lit the fire. Here's what happened. Celeste had a serious nut allergy, and Shanann was super careful about it. But during the visit, Cindy gave Celeste ice cream with peanut chips in it. Shanann was furious. She texted Chris, saying his mom put their daughter's life in danger. She was like, how could she be so reckless? Cindy's take? She thought Shanann was blowing it out of proportion, making a big deal out of a mistake. She said something about how the girls needed to learn they can't always get their way, which just poured gasoline on the situation. Shanann was done. She banned Cindy and Ronnie from seeing Bella and Celeste. No more visits, no more grandparent time. Cindy saw it as Shanann being controlling, using the kids to punish her. But Shanann's friends say she was just protecting her girls from someone she didn't trust anymore. Chris didn't help. He didn't stand up to his parents, but he didn't back Shanann up either. He just let the fight fester. That incident was like a wall going up between the families. The Watts didn't even go to Celeste's birthday party a few weeks later. Can you imagine how much that hurt? Both sides feeling betrayed, both sides digging in? It was a rift that never healed. Initial shock and denial. When Shanann and the girls went missing on August 13th, 2018, Cindy and Ronnie were beside themselves. They thought something terrible had happened. An accident, a kidnapping, anything but Chris. He was on TV, standing on his front porch, pleading for his family to come back, and they believed every word. To them, he was still their son, the quiet kid who'd never hurt anyone. Then, just 2 days later, everything changed. Chris confessed to killing Shanann, saying she strangled the girls after he asked for a separation, and he killed her in a rage. Cindy told a reporter, "It was like my whole world fell apart." Ronnie bought Chris's story at first. He sounded so emotional, so broken, like the son they knew. But then Chris admitted to all 3 murders, Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. His parents couldn't wrap their heads around it. Cindy kept saying, "He's not a sociopath. He's not a psychopath." Ronnie wondered if someone pressured him, maybe even forced him to do it. They couldn't let go of the son they'd raised. They kept asking, what happened to make him snap? Was someone else involved? It's like their hearts were fighting what their heads were hearing. How do you accept that your kid did something so horrific? Can you even begin to process that kind of truth? Their reaction to the plea deal. Fast forward to November 2018. Chris took a plea deal, 9 charges, including first-degree murder and unlawful termination of a pregnancy. It meant no death penalty, but 5 life sentences with no parole. The case was over, just like that. But for Cindy and Ronnie, it was like a punch to the gut. They weren't part of the talks with his lawyers. Cindy told 9 News, "We needed to talk to him to understand why he did this." She couldn't figure out why he pleaded guilty so fast. Was he scared? Was someone pushing him? Ronnie was right there with her, saying, if he didn't kill the girls, he should have said so and made them prove it. They felt left out, like the legal system just rolled over them. Shanann's family, the Rzuseks, wanted the plea deal. They needed the nightmare to end. But that difference, that divide, just made things worse between the families. Cindy and Ronnie kept wondering, did Chris really do it all? Was there something or someone else at play? It's like they were desperate for any explanation that didn't point straight at their son. Can you imagine feeling that loss in a case this big? The public interviews, speaking out. Cindy and Ronnie didn't stay quiet. They went on TV Dr. Phil, local stations like KMGH and ABC 11. Tried to tell their side of the story. Cindy would get choked up, tears in her eyes, but she'd hold it together. She'd say she was heartbroken for Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and unborn Nico, but then she'd come back to Chris. She'd talk about how he was a normal guy, their sweet son who changed after marrying Shanann. She'd hint that Shanann controlled him, that their marriage was falling apart. Ronnie didn't say as much, but he'd nod along, talking about how Chris cried when he confessed, like that meant something. They questioned everything, the timeline, the investigation, even Shanann's role in pushing Chris to the edge. It wasn't like they were saying he was innocent, but they couldn't call him a monster either. They were trying to figure out why their son snapped, to find some reason that made sense. Those interviews, though, they didn't go over well. People were mad, and it's not hard to see why. Were they just being honest about their pain, or were they crossing a line by pointing at Shanann? What do you think? Can you speak your truth when it hurts others? Backlash and public criticism. Man, those interviews stirred up a mess. Shanann's family was furious. They put out a statement to KMGH, calling Cindy and Ronnie's claims vicious and false. They said Shanann was a loving mom, a wonderful person, not the controlling figure Cindy described. Social media went off. Reddit threads ripped into them. People called them enablers, saying they were blaming a murdered woman to save their son. On X, it was even harsher. Some users called Cindy vile for dragging Shanann's name through the mud. The anger was real and it spread fast. But not everyone was against them. Some people fell for Cindy and Ronnie, seeing them as parents stuck in a nightmare, trying to hold on to their son. It's like the public split into two camps. Those who thought they were denying the truth, and those who saw their pain as human. Even if it came out wrong, the backlash was intense, but it makes you wonder, what would you do if it was your kid? Would you defend them, or would you turn away? How do you balance grief with what the world expects? Their relationship with Chris in prison. Even with Chris locked up for life in a Wisconsin prison, Cindy and Ronnie didn't walk away. They kept in touch, visits when they could make the trip, letters back and forth, phone calls when they got the chance. Cindy told HLN in 2019 that Chris had pictures of Shanann and the girls in his cell. She said he seemed sorry, but she thought he held back the worst details to protect them from more pain. Some say Chris was careful with what he told them, maybe to keep their love. In a 2020 letter, he wrote about finding God, calling himself a servant now. Cindy held on to that, hoping it meant he was changing, maybe finding some kind of redemption. Ronnie, too, seemed to cling to any sign of the son they knew. Their bond with Chris didn't break, no matter what the world thought. Some see that as unconditional love, the kind only parents can give. Others think it's Chris pulling strings, keeping them on his side even from behind bars. What's your take? Can you keep loving someone who's done something so terrible, or is that just enabling them? Their ongoing belief that Chris wasn't alone. Here's where things get really murky. Cindy and Ronnie never fully bought that Chris acted alone. In their interviews, they dropped little hints, talking about Nicole Kessinger, his mistress, or saying Chris wasn't himself before the murders. Cindy told 9 News she thought something or someone pushed him, like he was under some kind of spell or influence. Those ideas line up with stuff you see online. Reddit's got whole threads about Nicole, some even talking about a mystery accomplice nobody's found. But the police? They've been crystal clear. It's all Chris. No DNA, no fingerprints, no evidence of anyone else at the crime scene. Still, Cindy and Ronnie's doubts keep those theories alive for some people. It's like they can't accept their son did this on his own. Is it because they know something we don't? Or is it just easier to believe someone else was involved and to face the truth about their kid? What would it take for them to let go of that hope? Faith, forgiveness, and family loyalty. Cindy and Ronnie are deeply religious, and that's a huge part of their story. At Chris's sentencing in 2018, they stood up and gave statements. They said they were sorry for Shanann's family, but they also said they forgave Chris. God will judge, Cindy told Dr. Phil later, explaining that their faith means loving their son, no matter what he's done. To them, Chris is a sinner, sure, but he's still their boy. That's a tough one for a lot of people to understand. How do you forgive someone who killed his own family? But for Cindy and Ronnie, it's not about excusing him. It's about their belief that love doesn't just vanish, even when the world says it should. That faith kept them connected to Chris, but also made people angry. Some saw it as turning a blind eye to evil. Others saw it as strength, holding on to family no matter what. What do you think? Is forgiveness a way to heal, or does it just keep the pain alive? The role of denial in parental grief. Let's talk about denial because it's a big piece of this puzzle. Psychologists say when your kid does something unthinkable, denial is like a lifeline. For Cindy and Ronnie, admitting Chris killed his family means tearing down everything they believed about him. The quiet boy who loved sports, who never fought back. It's easier to say, maybe Shanann was too hard on him, or maybe someone else was there, than to face the truth head on. Experts call it shield, a way to protect your heart from breaking completely. Cindy's always insisting Chris isn't a sociopath. Ronnie held on to that first confession, where Chris blamed Shanann, like it was a lifeline. Even when Chris gave a detailed confession in 2019, laying out exactly how he killed them, his parents couldn't fully let go of their doubts. It's like denial is what's keeping them from falling apart. Can you imagine being in their shoes, trying to hold on to love when the truth is so brutal? How do you even start to process that? Public perception versus private pain. To most people, Cindy and Ronnie come off as clueless, maybe even cruel. Social media is rough. Reddit calls Cindy narcissistic. Ex-users say she's making excuses for a killer. People see their interviews and think, how can they defend him? How can they talk about Shanann like that? But behind closed doors, it's a different story. Friends say Ronnie's aged a decade in a few years, looking worn down and tired. Cindy's lost weight, cries all the time, barely holding together. They're not just offending Chris. They're grieving their grandkids, their daughter-in-law, and the son they thought they knew. That gap between how the public sees them and what they're going through privately, it's huge. It's why their story stirs up so much debate. Are they wrong to speak out? Or are they just trying to survive a nightmare nobody should have to live through? What would you do in their place? Shanann's family versus the Watts parents. Shanann's family, their Zuseks, were crushed by Cindy and Ronnie's interviews. They put out a statement to KMGH, calling Shanann a wonderful soul and slamming the Watts claims as false and hurtful. They felt like Cindy was smearing their daughter, blaming her for Chris's actions. It got worse when word got out that Cindy might write a book blaming Shanann for family drama, though it's not clear if that ever happened. There were also rumors about a fight over life insurance money, with Reddit saying the Watts tried to claim a share, but there's no solid proof in public records. The families never found a way to come together. Both lost so much, Shanann, Bella, Celeste, Nico, but their grief pulled them apart, not closer. It's like they're stuck on opposite sides of a canyon, unable to bridge the gap. How do you heal when the pain runs that deep and the other side won't even meet you halfway? Allegations of financial support and legal disputes. Then there's the money stuff, which got people really worked up. Some claimed Cindy and Ronnie were trying to cash in, raising money for Chris's defense or making bank off their TV interviews. Cindy shut that down, saying they just wanted answers, not a paycheck. But their appearances on Dr. Phil and local news didn't help. People thought they were exploiting the tragedy for attention or profit. There was also talk about a lawsuit. The Razuseks reportedly fought the Watts over using Shanann's name and likeness, maybe in a book or media project. Reddit went wild with speculation, but the details are murky. No public records spell it out clearly. All this just fueled the fire. It looked like Cindy and Ronnie were putting Chris first, not justice for Shanann and the girls. But were they really after money, or was it just rumors piling on top of their pain? How much of what we hear is true, and how much is just noise? There's silence in recent years. These days, Cindy and Ronnie have gone pretty quiet. Since around 2020, they've stayed out of the spotlight. A Reddit post in 2023 mentioned a rare interview where they still question Chris's guilt, but that's about it. They haven't been on TV, haven't given big statements. Maybe it's their age catching up, maybe it's health issues, or maybe the constant hate just wore them down. Some think they've finally started to accept what Chris did, at least privately. Others say they're just keeping their heads down to avoid more backlash. Their silence feels like a shift, like a chapter closing. But it doesn't erase what they said before. Their interviews, their doubts, their love for Chris. People still talk about it, still argue about what it means. Have they made peace with the truth? Or are they just tired of fighting the world? The complex legacy of the Watts parents. So, what's the deal with Cindy and Ronnie Watts? Are they just parents who can't let go of their son? Are they enabling a killer by questioning the case? Or are they victims, too, caught in Chris's web of lies? It's not a simple answer. They're not evil, but they're not heroes either. They're human, grieving, confused, stuck in a nightmare most of us can't even imagine. Their love for Chris, their doubts about the case, their pain. It all paints a picture of people trying to hold on to something when everything's gone. Their legacy is tied to this tragedy, and it's a tough one to pin down. They didn't do the crime, but they became part of the story, part of the debate. What would you do if it was your kid? Could you ever let go? Or would you hold on, no matter what the world says? How they influence public opinion. Every time Cindy and Ronnie opened their mouths, they stirred up a storm. Their interviews got people talking. Some started digging into wild theories about Nickel Kessinger or secret accomplices. Reddit and X lit up with debates. Some saying they were onto something. Others saying they were just deflecting blame from Chris. They became symbols in this case. To some, they're the face of denial, refusing to see Chris for what he is. To others, they're parents who love their son, no matter how bad it looks. Either way, their words kept the case alive, sparking arguments about what really happened. It makes you think, how much power do a few words have? Did they mean to cause so much trouble, or were they just trying to be heard in a world that was screaming at them? Lessons on grief, denial, and the search for truth. This case isn't just about murder. It's about what happens when people face something so awful it breaks them. Cindy and Ronnie show us how love can mess with your head, how denial can keep you from falling apart completely. They didn't kill anyone, but their choices, speaking out, defending Chris, became part of the story. It's a reminder that grief is messy, that love doesn't always make sense, that truth can be hard to hold on to when it hurts this much. What can we learn from them? Maybe that even in the worst moments, people are still human, still searching for answers, even if they're the wrong ones. It's a story that makes you ask, how do you love someone who's done something so evil? How do you find truth when it's buried under so much pain? Final reflection, when love refuses to die. Here's the thing about Cindy and Ronnie Watts. They still love their son. After everything, the murders, the confessions, the life sentences, they still see Chris as their boy. It's hard to wrap your head around, isn't it? It feels wrong to a lot of people, maybe even disrespectful to Sean and Bella, Celeste and Nico. But it's real. Their love doesn't mean they're okay with what he did. It doesn't mean they're not grieving for their daughter-in-law and grandkids. It just means that even when someone does something monstrous, they're still someone's kid. Cindy and Ronnie carry that love, that pain, every single day. It's a haunting piece of the story, a reminder that sometimes love doesn't quit, even when the truth is too heavy to bear. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Chris Watts case here on Dark Truths, True Crime Stories. If this story got you thinking, hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you make of Cindy and Ronnie's stance? Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss an episode. We've got more true crime mysteries coming your way, so stick around for the next one. Until then, keep searching for the truth.